Hello everyone, happy to be here at the 2025 Taipei Game Developers Forum today, and welcome to my sessions on crafting audio experiences for interactive VR narratives. In today's session, I will be using one VR project that I worked on before as a case study to discuss what works and what does not work when it comes to designing immersive audio for such genre in VR. First, a brief introduction about myself. My name is Larry. I am a music composer and sound designer, focusing on creating immersive and engaging sonic experience for immersive experience and interactive experience like virtual realities and video games. I'm currently based in New York City. I started my career writing music for film, theaters, and commercials, more of a linear projects, and I have worked on several successful film productions in Taiwan. And after that, I decided to acquire a master's degree in the entertainment technology at the Carnegie Mellon University, where I started my journey to explore the possibilities that audio can play in a more interactive media. I had the opportunity to collaborate with many people and work on a variety of VR projects. Now, I work as an audio specialist and audio director, helping many companies and studios and provide audio solutions to help them with their interactive projects. So here are some of the more well-known projects that I worked on before. Today we'll be using the projects called The Price of Freedom as our case study. But before that, why audio? Why are we even talking about audio? Is it audio really that important for virtual reality? Turns out, audio is crucial in many forms of the storytelling. George Lucas once said, he feels like sound is half the experience. David Lynch also mentioned that films are 50% visual and 50% sound. Sometimes sounds even overplay the visuals, which is even more true when it comes to virtual reality, because sound directly affects the immersion of the experience. For example, in virtual reality, if we pick up bottles and drop it on the floor, and the process doesn't make any sound, or the sound doesn't match our expectation, immediately our subconscious mind will tell us there's something wrong with this world, simply because the audio feedback doesn't match our expectation. The virtual world with poor audio design will appear to be less believable. So in order to keep the player immersing themselves in the virtual world, we have to make sure the audio is engaging enough to keep the virtual world alive. Now let's take a look at the trailers of The Price of Freedom to get a better sense of what the project is about.
Benjamin Miller is a traitor. Find Benjamin and kill him.
This is the confession of Benjamin Miller, traitor to my country. I am the infiltrator of Westgate Psychiatric. I have here Dr. Engel's research files, and I will read out everyone.
Kill Benjamin.
Launch commenced. Liftoff.
Benjamin Miller is a traitor. Find Benjamin and kill him.
I'm so sorry.
The Price of Freedom is an interactive VR story based on the true events of Project MK Ultra. Project MK Ultra is declassified horrifying events from the 60s to the 70s, where CIA did human experiments and brainwashed innocent people, telling them to do terrible things. In the story, you are told to be a CIA agent and are given a task to kill Ben Miller, a radical who broke into CIA facilities and stole top secret documents, research paper. By exploring in his environment, the player will discover the true reason for their mission and who they really are eventually. The average experiencing time of this project is about 15 to 20 minutes. We use Unity as our game engine. For the platform, we use HTC Vive, then port into Oculus Quest later. We use Wise as our audio middleware, as well as in-house building audio tools to handle interactive audio, which we will discuss just in a bit. The Price of Freedom turns out to be a quite successful project that has been showcased in many of the major events like Sundance Film Festival, VRLA, and SceneQuest Film Festival. But before we start discussing how to design audio, we need to identify the type of audio content we have for the experience. We divided our audio elements into 4 primary categories. They are sound effects, music, ambience, and voiceover. When working in VR, it is important to plan and prioritize these elements strategically. Notice that we don't really have the UI sound in the category. That is because we don't really have the UI elements in this project particularly, because it doesn't really fit into the story world. But if other projects, they have included UI elements into their story, then depends on the context, it might be put in the same categories as sound effects, or even they have their own category. But how are we going to prioritize making them? And how are we going to place them in VR? Well, from my personal experience, I think integrating core sound effects like interaction sound and collision sound in the early stage of the development can be very beneficial. The reason is because it not only helps the designers and developers to envision their design and have a better judgment on how to expand or change the world they created, but it also helps audio professionals like myself to spot potential problems and work on fixing them before the problems get too big and too expensive to fix at the later stage of the production. For example, in the early stage prototype, we gave each interactable object a collision sound and a interaction sound, and this is how it sounded like. As you can hear, the one-size-fits-all approach didn't provide enough variation to feel natural. Lacking of diversity definitely breaks the immersion, just because the sound feedback doesn't match our expectation to our daily life. To solve this, we created a dynamic audio system, a system that delivers real-time feedback to players' action based on context. There are many ways that can achieve dynamic audio design. Middleware like Wise or Fmod are built in to provide interactive audio solutions. Unreal Engine also developed their own native audio tools called Meta Sounds to provide dynamic audio solutions. Many game companies also created their own customized in-house audio system to cater their own need for dynamic audio feature. Here is the interface of Wise. And here is the interface of Fmod. And this is how Unreal Meta Sounds looks like. Even though their interface looks drastically different from one another, they all serve the same purpose, to create a dynamic audio feedback based on the player's actions in real time. If you are interested in including dynamic audio for your projects in a more effective way, I highly recommend integrating one of those middleware to your project. We decided to build our own in-house tools to handle collisions and interaction sound, which has 2 features. One is the material sound feature. The second is the collision sound feature. In the material sound feature, we created a list of common material folders like metal, glass, plastic, and wood, and assigned them to each interactable object in the scene based on their feature. And when the collision happens, the system can detect how strong the collision force and divide them into 3 different groups: light, medium, and heavy. And in each folders, we have a list of sound clips that the system can choose from. And on top of that, we have the pitch variation systems to make sure that each time a sound is triggered, the pitch will sound a little bit different to make the overall sound experience even more unique and organic. So this is how the interface looks like in Unity. At the top, you'll see this object has 1 pickup sound, 1 drop sound. And depending on its context, they may have holding sounds. At the bottom, you'll see this object is attached to the materials of a glass. It has 3 levels of intensity: light, medium, and heavy. So this is how it looks like after we use the new interactive audio system. It sounds much more natural, and we have to apply these techniques to all the objects in the scene, just because in the interactive narrative experience, the player has all the freedom to interact with all the objects in the scene. Whatever they touch must have satisfying feedback, sound feedback for them, so they can still immerse themselves in the experience. But if there are so many audio elements in the scene, how are we going to make sure that they are receiving the more important information of the story and actually get the narratives? When it comes to telling story in a more interactive media, there is a concept that can be very helpful to this approach. It's called the indirect control. It's a technique using design to guide the players to perform a certain expected action without letting them realize that they are being guided. Here is another short video games as an example. In this game, you are the red dot, and your mission is to escape this forest full of monsters. In this scenario, you have 3 paths to go to: right, bottom, and the left. Most players will choose the right path just because there is a clear exit sign compared with the other options, which one has the dead body, the other has the footprints of the monsters. So even though the player thinks they have the full freedom to choose wherever they wanted to go, but eventually they'll still choose the path that the designer wanted to go, which is the right path in this case. Audio is a great way to use indirect control for several reasons. First, it can set up time and the space of the environment. We have a radio that plays the music in the 60s. We also have a TV that broadcasts JF Kennedy's inauguration speech in the project. So once the player jump into the environments, immediately they get that they are in the eras of the Cold War. Audio is also a great way to draw the player's attention. We install a reel-to-reel tape in different parts of the scene. So whenever the reel start playing, the player will automatically turn their head to that location and focusing on that area of the environment that the designer wanted them to focusing on. The information of those reel-to-reel tape also provide important information of the story, along with other elements like letters, posters, banners, and pictures. So even though the player might miss one of the elements in the scene, in general, they still can get the overall idea about what the narrative is about, because we try to tell the story over and over again with different kind of ways. Interactive music allows us to shape a player's emotional arc in real time. We composed music in modular layers, each designed to express escalating emotional intensity. We have developed an interactive music sequence in a fire scene of the project. In this scene, the player just discover what terrible thing they have done and who they really are. We want the player to feel from numb to sorrow in different levels. So we develop a 4-stage interactive music for the player to trigger from one point to another. In the first layer, the player just read through the binders and discover their identity. We want them to feel numb at this stage, so we only introduce a layer of synthesizer that simulate the heartbeats of human beings. And as soon as they lit up the binders and set the room on fire, the second layer got introduced. In this layer, we have introduced a piano elements to simulate that the conscious of the characters start to wake up. And as soon as they discover the way to exit this chamber, the third layer got triggered. In this layer, the full range of sorrow starts to kick in. We introduce a full range of string instruments to imitate this feeling. And at the end, we give this music a final musical tails to simulate how we experience linear music like in the TV shows or in the movies. And then the story goes on. Now let's take a listen to the music example of this fire scene.
You have done well, Agent Zero. Do you see what you are now? I have one more task for you. Burn it. Good. Burn your past Agent Zero. Good. That was easy to do, wasn't it? You didn't even think twice. Return to Westgate, Agent Zero. There's nothing more for you here. Welcome back. I am satisfied.
In The Price of Freedom, we have designed signature or theme music combining both non-diegetic and diegetic form for different themes of the narratives. For people who doesn't know what it means, diegetic music is the one that its audio source actually comes from the story space, like the radio, music from the TV, concert in the scene, while non-diegetic music is not. Signature music helps remind the player of a specific character or scene subconsciously. For example, we have developed a theme music for Ben Miller's daughter, Kathy. It shows up the very first time in the experience with a diegetic form, the tune of a music box which Ben gave it to her for her birthday present. Ever since then, whenever the plot of information is about this character, the same tune will show up, remind the player of this character. Now we have designed the sound effects and music for this project, but how are we going to place them in VR? We want to create a sonic space to immerse the player in the virtual world, but at the same time we want to provide some clarity for certain audio cues to make sure that the player won't miss it during the experience. In general, we separate all the audio assets into different groups. One stay in a fixed location, while the other will move along with the player. The first group includes our ambient sound, collision and interaction sound, diegetic music, and some of the dialogue. It attaches the sound to either a certain object or a place in the space that basically creates a sense of the audio space for the player. Take our surrounding ambience environmental sound as an example. We designed a 5-speaker system for each room, attach each model sound file to each speaker, and place them in the space to simulate how we set 5.1 speaker in the real world. The second group of the sound, however, will move corresponding to the player's location. It includes some of the dialogue and non-diegetic music and audio from the cutscene. It includes some of the dialogue and non-diegetic music and audio from the cutscenes. This group is for the purpose of making sure the player will receive the full information from the audio content. Take the voiceover as an example. We have a voice from the doctor's characters that gives you orders about what you should do next throughout the experience. We put the voiceover source right behind the player's head all the time. This setting not only enables the player to always be able to get the clear information from the same orientation, but it also matches the setting of the story, which this picture might pretty much explain everything. Now we have all the sound in place in VR. How are we going to manage mixing them? We figured that it will be easier for us to manage all audio sources by putting them into bigger groups like sound effects, music, dialogue, and ambience, assigning the groups into individual channels in the Unity mixers, and mixing based on groups instead of individual files. Of course, the files that are groups inside the channels have already adjusted relative volumes between each other in DAW, that is Digital Audio Workstation, before putting them into Game Engine. That being said, It is very important to check your mix in VR because the audio you hear in DAWs is definitely not going to sound the same in VR environments. For me, it is not a one-time thing. It's definitely a back and forth process. And you can save the mixing for each of the game state. While the player explores the area from one state to another, the mixing will change dynamically based on the player's action in real time. In retrospect, we used The Price of Freedom as a case study to talk about audio design in narrative experience in VR. We talk about the importance to put collision sound and interaction sound into the experience as soon as possible to help the designers and developers to envision their ideas and work on modification or expansion of their projects. We also help audio professionals like myself to spot potential problems and work on fixing them before the problems get too difficult to fix at the later half of the production stage. We are also talked about using audio to tell interactive stories by using the ideas of indirect control. We also talk about how to place audio elements inside virtual space by dividing them into two different groups. The first one will stay in a fixed location, while the second group will move around along with the player. And finally, we'll talk about dynamic mixing in virtual reality. Well, that's it for today. Thank you again for coming for this session. I hope you find some of the information helpful. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you want to talk more about audio in VR. Until then, hope you have a great rest of your conference and see you next time.
My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
It got me in there, it got me hooked.
Like, I felt like I had stepped into another person's life. This is like really the first example that I've seen of a VR experience.
The initial feelings that I had with The Price of Freedom is a little bit of fear, because you realize how good storytelling can be in VR. It might even just be the killer app that VR has been waiting for.
I'm pretty mind blown. I felt like I was in an X-Files episode, but I was in it, I wasn't watching it.
And then when I set the whole room on fire, like I was like, oh my god, I'm engulfed in flames, where do I go?
What I really liked the most about the experience was the ability to, do an adventure, mystery adventure thing where I could be in a room and, pick up clues.
The idea of making me the more active agent in the story and allowing me to actually navigate and affect it in that way was really powerful, and I think something that more storytellers should do.
And what they've done really well is a lot of times you go into these games, you don't know who you are, and the game is built around that and trying to discover who you are.
They try to engage your emotional sense, your rational sense, and your, shall we say, your moral sense.
It's definitely one of the most sophisticated narrative things that I've seen.
I think that the team that made Price of Freedom did a really superb job.
I want to know what happens next.
I want another chapter. I want to see more, basically.